Hey everyone, and welcome. We're so glad you're here for this devotional explainer on the incredible words of Psalm 90 brought to you by the You Need Faith in Jesus team. Today we're going to dive into what's thought to be the oldest psalm in the entire Bible, a powerful prayer straight from Moses. It tackles some of life's biggest questions, so let's get right into it.
Moses kicks things off with this amazing statement. Now, you've got to think about who's writing this. This is a man who spent 40 years as a shepherd in exile, and then another 40 years leading an entire nation through the wilderness. He knew what it meant to not have a permanent home. And yet, he says our true, secure, eternal home, it's not a place at all. It's God himself. And that idea right there sets the stage for everything else.
So that leaves us right into our first big idea, understanding God as our eternal home. See, before Moses gets into the tough stuff, the hard realities of our short lives, he wants us to anchor ourselves in this truth, the eternal, unchanging nature of God. This is the foundation, our ultimate refuge, and believe me, it changes how we see everything else.
So what does that actually mean for us today? That God is our dwelling place? Well, it means that when the world feels shaky, when our circumstances are shifting like desert sands, our true identity, our real security, is found in our relationship with Him. He is our constant. He's our shelter. You know, Moses himself would later write in Deuteronomy, "The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms." And this is just incredible. Look at how Moses contrasts the created with the Creator. He takes the most permanent things he can possibly think of, these ancient mountains, the very earth itself, and says, God was here long before any of that. Before the in the beginning of Genesis 1:1, God was. He is from everlasting to everlasting. Just amazing.
And that's the takeaway for you and me, right? When we really get a hold of God's eternal power, it puts our own problems into the right perspective. The things that feel so huge, so overwhelming to us, they're temporary, they're small when you compare them to the timeless God we serve. And that knowledge, right there, is the foundation of our trust in Him.
Okay, so after laying that incredible foundation of God's eternal nature, Moses does something pretty amazing. He pivots. He creates this massive tension by contrasting God's timelessness with the shocking, almost brutal brevity and fragility of our own human lives.
I mean, just listen to these images Moses uses. He says our lives are swept away like a flood, that they're as fleeting as a dream, like grass that's green and vibrant in the morning, but by evening is cut down and withered. He even says we spend our years as a tale that is told, like a story that's over in a blink. It's a sobering dose of reality for sure. In this comparison, wow, it really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? From God's point of view, 1,000 years is like yesterday. The Apostle Peter actually quotes this in the New Testament. But for us, we maybe get 70 or 80 years. The huge difference in scale isn't meant to discourage us, but to teach us a little humility.
So yeah, Moses says we might get 70, maybe 80 years if we're strong. But then he immediately points out, even if we get those extra years, what are they often filled with? Labor and sorrow. Life in this fallen world is just plain hard, and no matter how long it feels, it's over quickly. I mean, Moses watched an entire generation live out this very truth in the desert.
And you know, this isn't just an Old Testament thing. The New Testament picks up this exact same idea. James uses this powerful image of a vapor. You see it for a second, and then it's gone. But here's the crucial part. This understanding shouldn't make us depressed. It should make us urgent. It should light a fire under us to live for things that have eternal value. So that brings up the big question, right? Why? Why is life so short, so hard? Why are we so frail? Well, now Moses gets to the root cause, God's righteous and holy anger against sin. This is the difficult but absolutely necessary truth at the very heart of this psalm.
Wow. Just think about that verse for a second. God's holiness is like a brilliant searching light, and in that light, all of our sins are completely exposed. Even the secret sins, the ones we think we've managed to hide from everyone, they're laid bare before Him. His holy nature just can't ignore them. There's nowhere to hide. And again, this isn't some outdated concept. The book of Romans makes it crystal clear that God's wrath against sin is a present reality. Now, understanding this should never, ever lead us to treat sin lightly. Instead, it should fill us with this overwhelming sense of gratitude for the cross of Jesus, because that's where that righteous wrath was satisfied for us.
So then Moses asks this really penetrating question. Who gets this? Who truly understands the power of God's holiness? He suggests that the answer is found in having a proper reverential fear of God.
And that's not a cowering terror, but a profound respect that actually becomes the very beginning of wisdom. It helps us to hate sin the way he does and cling to his grace even tighter. And right here, this is where everything shifts. After laying out the problem, our short, sinful lives standing before an eternal, holy God, Moses now moves to the solution. He shows us how to pray for wisdom and for a life that actually has a lasting purpose. This verse, right here, is the absolute heart of the whole psalm. It's the central prayer. Now, to number our days doesn't mean trying to figure out the date we're going to die. No, it means living with a constant awareness of just how few our days really are, so that we treat every single one like the precious, irreplaceable gift it is.
So what's the goal of all this? It's to get a heart of wisdom. And what is that? Well, it's simply living every single moment with eternity in mind. See, a wise person lives for what lasts forever. A foolish person lives as if this short life is all there is. It's exactly what the Apostle Paul meant in Ephesians when he told us to be wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil.
From there, the prayer just pours out with this passionate plea for mercy. You can almost hear the longing in Moses' voice. He cries out for God to turn back to his people in blessing. And he asks to be satisfied early with God's mercy, so they can find real, lasting joy, not in their circumstances, which always change, but in God's unfailing love.
And he wraps up the prayer with this absolutely beautiful request. First, for God's beauty, his grace, his favor to be on them. And second, with that favor, for God to establish the work of our hands. In a life this short, this is our deepest hope, that God would take our small efforts and give them lasting, eternal significance.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? How do we apply this today? Well, Moses' prayer gives us a super practical 4-step guide. Number 1, consciously acknowledge that your time is short. 2, start every single day asking God to satisfy you with his mercy. 3, pray for his favor, his beauty to be on your life. And finally, number 4, ask him to give your work an eternal purpose.
And listen, this isn't just some nice idea or wishful thinking. The New Testament gives us this rock-solid promise. Because Jesus rose from the dead, we can know for certain that our labor for the Lord is not in vain. It has an impact that will last for all eternity.
So I want to leave you with this to think about. If you really, truly took it to heart that your days are a precious, limited gift, what work at your job, in your family, in your church, what eternal work would you ask God to establish starting today? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into Psalm 90. We really pray it was a blessing to you. This devotional explainer was brought to you by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.